Tony D and Little Joan with a screenwriter's rant on Zodiac, the 2007 David Fincher movie. And I have watched it, so I'm going to review it. I will also be on the American Werewolf podcast on Wednesday at 8 p.m. To discuss it with the panel. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys. Books 1 through 17. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget Kindle Unlimited. It's free. Everyone's in this damn movie. Literally everyone. Mark Ruffalo. Jake Gyllenhaal. Let's get the whole cast up here. Robert Downey Jr., of course. Brian Cox. Anthony Edwards, a.k.a. Goose. Who else? Chloe Sevigny. Everybody here's at their prime. Dermot Mulroney. So, a lot of big names. Or people who eventually became big names. I don't know how big they were. 2007. Some of these people were pretty famous then. Certainly RDJ. And the first thing that struck me about this movie was all these names, and that I was watching an actual movie. Like, I never understood when older people back in the day would say, oh, they don't make movies like they used to. Now I totally get that. This is a real movie. Like, everybody in here is acting. Everything's driving towards the ending of this thing, and it's a real movie. It's not like one of these we're just going through the motions movie, or some half-ass IP we revamped. This is being crafted, and you could see the craft in this. And I'm surprised it's David Fincher, because there wasn't a lot of there was some gross stuff in this. I don't think he really even needed to show the murders, but he shows them in the beginning, and they're pretty gruesome, pretty awful. And at first I was a little turned off. The movie's 2.5 hours, so I was like, oh god, this is gonna be a long slog. It's wonderfully paced. Fincher does a great job with the pacing. It just jumps from each incident to the next. Because remember, the Zodiac killer, who was a real guy, killed women over the course of about 15 years. I mean, that's how long the case went to. They don't even get to the very, very end, but they mention it in the sort of end. There's really nothing to give away in this movie if you're familiar even a little bit with the Zodiac killer. I mean, spoilers if you haven't read about this case, but my non-spoiler review, it's just wonderfully paced. Really great performances. Even Mark Ruffalo, who annoys the F out of me today, he's great in this. He's absolutely great in it. Jake Gyllenhaal is basically Jake Gyllenhaal, but it's a very subtle performance. Brian Cox in there. He's only in there for a short time. They're all playing real people, by the way. Anthony Edwards is Anthony Edwards. Robert Downey Jr. almost steals the show. Again, slight spoiler. You're watching him, and he's so charismatic. You feel like, at a point in the movie, like, well, we're going to follow Robert, right? We're not going to leave him behind, are we? And we kind of do. We kind of leave Robert out of the movie. You think, like, there's a moment in which Jake Gyllenhaal's character goes to visit him, and he's drunk, and his life's falling apart, and you think, oh, I bet Jake Gyllenhaal tells him to get sober and helps him out. Nope, he can't. He really doesn't have that ability. So it's very interesting. The The time period is very interesting because it was San Francisco before it became an S-hole. So you got a lot of old buildings here. It all looks very clean and nice. It's got a lot of vintage cars. I mean, the look of this thing is amazing. You got Mark Ruffalo in a bow tie of all things. Um, you can just see these old cars. And the interesting thing about it, it comes off a little bit like The Wire, in that at a certain point, nobody cares about the Zodiac killer anymore. Like, they can't catch him. There's like a couple of ways they're trying to catch him, and after that, they just kind of give up. There's just too much crime, too much stuff going on. And in some respects, the Zodiac is too smart for everybody. Except Jake Gyllenhaal, who I think at the end solves it. Although, there's a moment in the movie where they imply it might be another guy, which is very interesting because the main suspect in this seems very guilty. But there's one other guy in this movie you go, oh, that could be him. I could totally 100% be him. And the other guy could just be a fluke. One of the things in this movie is the Zodiac, and again, this was real life. The Zodiac would take credit for murders that he probably didn't do. And there were also guys imitating the Zodiac. There was a mental patient that somehow got a hold of a phone and called into a TV show. But yeah, there were a lot of people who were attributed to the Zodiac, but they're not sure who he killed and who he didn't kill. So it's kind of crazy if you read about it. I can see why people are sort of fascinated, like, you know, they were fascinated by Jack the Ripper and they never really figured out who he was. The guy who it probably was probably the main suspect, I'll say. Seems that way. Or it seems that there were a lot of guys killing people in California, and they've got about a dozen guys who probably killed at least one person, but which one was the Zodiac? They're not quite sure. That's kind of the way it feels. So let's break down the acts. The first act is the Zodiac killer kills a bunch of people and then makes a splash in the news. Starts calling in. Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards are the cops trying to figure it out. In the newsroom, it's Robert Downey Jr. writing the stories about it. And they kind of make his character the fall guy because his character is definitely dead by the time they shot this movie. The other characters were old, but I think they were still around. So, and I think it was probably based on a book. So I think this character sort of is the fall guy for all the bad stuff because he's dead. They could kind of do that. That's the way that's the sense of it to me. But anyhow, I mean, I assume he was really an alcoholic. I don't know. I didn't drill that deep into the background. But at first, Robert Downey's the guy covering it. And then the Zodiac mentions him and kind of threatens him. So then he wants a gun, and he does more drinking, and eventually, you know, he destroys himself. And Jake Gyllenhaal is kind of his would-be assistant, but he's a cartoonist. He's not really meant to be doing any of this, but it becomes an obsession with him, even as he starts dating Chloe Vigini, whatever her name is. Donald, I can't stop on him. Yeah, it's, what's the name? Oh, God, what the hell's his name? Donald Logan, or... let me get the full cast and crew here. Donald Logue, that's his name. Donald Logue. He's good too, and he's been in a million things. He looks fat in this. I don't know if they fattened him up or because these were all based on real people, or if he was just fat then and lost the weight. I think they actually fattened him up. So here, as the case progresses, Robert Downey Jr. gets a little too involved, and the Zodiac's targeting him, and the case just goes south. Now, they end up interviewing a guy that they really like for it, but since they can't connect him to the handwriting or the fingerprint they found, they can't figure out if it's him. They have no evidence if it's him. And that's mainly what they're going on, at least according to the movie. I'm sure there were other elements, but that's what they were trying to get him on, the handwriting. But another thing to think about is there's no proof that the guy writing the notes necessarily was the killer. He might have been working with him. They might have been working together. You know, the guy writing the notes may not have been the killer. So that's a point. Although he did send them proof. He sent them bloody swatches of victims' clothes. So, but eventually it does lead to the guy they questioned, by the way, if you read about it. And so that doesn't happen until the third act. The third act is basically jumps to years later. Everyone's abandoned the case, essentially. They've been forced to. And Jake Gyllenhaal decides to write a book. Robert Downey Jr. is crawled into a bottle. Gyllenhaal is desperately trying to find the clues. He kind of can't let it go. He's putting together the clues while everyone around him has abandoned it. So, like, at one point, the cop, Mark Ruffalo's character, gets accused of sending in a fake note, but he was eventually cleared of that. But, like, Jake Gyllenhaal just keeps going forward, because he's the main character, but it even destroys his marriage, and eventually, he just says at some point, he wants to look the guy in the eye and know whether or not it was him. So he eventually tracks him down and does that, looks him in the eye, and then walks away. So nobody ever figures out definitively if it's the killer. However, in 92, I think it was, they eventually focused in on that main suspect again after many years. And when they were going to bring him in for questioning or charge, he had a heart attack and died. So they never found out. But there's evidence to suggest he confessed to other relatives and that he was the killer. So I think it was him. It sounds very much like him. At the very least, he killed somebody, I would say. He was also a, guy who attacked children guy. I don't want to say the word. You get slammed on YouTube, but yeah, one of those pervs. So yeah, murder doesn't seem totally out of whack for a messed up guy like that. But again, I mean, this movie is just, the pacing on it is just, mwah. It just zooms along. And I was really worried about the pacing, especially in the beginning when he was showing the murders. I didn't really want to see the murders. I thought it was a bit gratuitous, but I get it now that I've seen the whole movie. The point was to sort of shock you and show you how terrible it was. Although the problem with it is those murders have no personal connection to the characters trying to solve the case. So it's really more about them than it is about the murders or the Zodiac. It's really good. It's a really well-crafted film. Now, maybe it's just I haven't seen an actual film in so long. Seeing one from 2007 made by someone decent like Fincher. But, God, I was surprised. And like, Fincher, this is before he sort of luxuriates in his fame and does Benjamin Button and whatever. He's just doing a film, based on a true story. It's very stripped down to just the events of what happened, and there's a couple of dramatic moments for the actors, but they're short. They're compact, they move well, and they just move on to the next thing. So you get a lot of character arcs here. You get Robert Downey Jr.'s character arc. You get Jake Gyllenhaal's character arc, having a relationship and letting it go. You get Anthony Edwards' arc of his career and Ruffalo's career. And it really feels like a big world that's moving forward, and that's what I really like about it. So it doesn't feel like it's 2.5 hour run at all. It feels very tight. Very tight. I mean, I think you could have cut a few scenes. Quite frankly, the scene with the alternate suspect almost doesn't work. But, and it's actually the guy who did the voice of Roger Rabbit, if you're watching closely. So, yeah, I would recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. Especially if you don't know anything about the Zodiac, but, you probably do. I don't know how you can live in the world and not know, at least in passing, about the Zodiac Killer and the basics of it. But it is a fascinating look. And as far as I could tell, a pretty good job at revealing the facts of the case in a dramatic fashion that looks mostly okay. Now, my only quibble on that end is, I don't know if Mark Ruffalo's accent seems correct for the guy he was playing. Maybe it was. I don't know. It seems wrong for California, but maybe that's the way the guy talked. I don't know. Again, these are real people. The guy who plays the main suspect, he looks exactly like him. One of the Poyle brothers from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia plays one of the surviving witnesses who comes back after something like 22 years to finally identify the guy. So a lot of this feels like the Zodiac was just lost in the shuffle, and, maybe San Francisco was too embarrassed by the lack of progress on the case that they just sort of wanted to forget it. But eventually, it seems to me that they got their guy. Although, not really, because he died. But anyhow, yeah, Zodiac, it's now playing on Pluto TV for absolutely free. Absolutely free. You can watch it. There's a lot of good movies on Pluto TV. You might want to check that out. And check me out this Wednesday, I should say, on the American Werewolf podcast. That's at 8 p.m. And we'll be discussing the movie with a panel there with Mike and his buddies. I'm not sure who else is going to be on the panel, but Mike is the American Werewolf, so he'll be there. As for me, Saturday, tomorrow, I will be in Penns Grove, New Jersey for the Ostera Fair. And that's from 10 to 4. Then Sunday, I'll be in historic Whitesbog Village from 10 to 3 for the Craft and Book Fair. And then, of course, at 7 p.m., don't miss the live stream where we do it live. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.